Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Happy Tuesday. And welcome to this week's Believe in Serverless podcast. I believe we are on lucky number 13.
Yeah.
I'm Danielle Heberling, and this is my co-host, Andres Moreno. How are you doing, Andres?
I'm doing great. Happy to be back. I was on a over 2 week vacation where I completely disconnected. So happy to be back, engaging with all you people and just getting back to it.
Yeah, we're glad to have you back. So let's jump in. All right. So a reminder about this podcast. We're here to talk about you. We're going to cover everything that happened last week from October 7th to October 14th in the year 2024. We're going to cover the best conversations from Discord, answer any pressing questions that might have gone unanswered. We're going to discuss some live sessions that happened this week and what we found interesting. But before we jump into that, let's first thank our sponsor.
Today's episode is brought to you by Momento. Streaming isn't just about fast loading times anymore. It's about true interactivity. With Momento, you get a real-time data platform designed for seamless video streaming that keeps your viewers engaged, buffer-free. Whether it's live sports, esports, or interactive content, Momento ensures smooth performance and flawless interactivity at any scale. Power your content with Momento, the trusted backbone for next-gen streaming. Learn more at gomomento.com.
Yeah, many thanks to Momento for sponsoring sponsors like this that help keep our community going. Looks like we got some new members this week.
8 new members. That's awesome.
And 23 total last I counted. So we're getting close to the 1,000 mark, which is exciting.
Yeah, we should celebrate that. I can try and pronounce the names of the new members. People use weird Discord handles and not their real names. I understand, but we got Jimmy. That was simple enough. Strings28, Xbatis, Heavy Dev, Sarah Samways, David Garipi, probably got that one wrong, KA, and Jonathan. Welcome, everybody. Happy to have you in the community, and hopefully you start engaging, asking questions, showing us what you've done. We're interested in many of these things.
Let's get into community highlights. Looks like we had a discussion surrounding turning off your computers. And there was a mix based on people's personal preference and compliance. What is your personal preference on this, Andres?
And I can't remember who posted that, but it's usually I reboot when either I'm completely locked and the computer's not working anymore, or some installation requires it. I believe Michael Walmsley mentioned the compliance piece, right? And his machine is forcefully rebooted like every 16 days or something like that. And there's just people that go forever until your computer fails. So again, different mixes. I don't think there's a super legit guidance, but it's just as we mentioned, it's personal preference and or compliance. What about you? What do you do?
I typically turn mine off on the weekends for work computer. So
Yeah.
It keeps it going fast because sometimes Docker and Mac can be not great performance. Restarting every now and then can be helpful.
Yep. Yeah, it's an interesting. Again, everybody does it differently, I think, and there's people that just multiple times a day turn it off. Yeah, no, that's too much for me.
Yeah, it's a lot of waiting, I think, personally.
Yeah.
All right. And then it looks like we had another discussion about how to notify a single page application that a new version of the app was deployed. So there were quite a few opinions and advice on this. We thought this was an interesting one to cover.
Yeah, this one's been running for a few days now, this conversation. And again, there's a lot of opinions. And at the end of the day, the answer we always like is it depends what your needs are. Some of the things that got brought up is, and I think the one that was most liked was having a service worker that runs on a separate thread on the browser, just checking every now and then if there's a new version, and if there is, just send a message to the main UI thread and do a refresh. The one I'm more used to is doing this on whether you're refresh, because they brought up refresh tokens on the with your authentication.
Mhm.
So there's multiple ways to handle a refresh token, right? There's the, hey, this refresh token is going to last forever, but it's still refreshing. So you can listen to that event to then refresh at that point, right? Just refresh the screen. It might be inconvenient if you're in the middle of saving a page. And so it's very weird, and it's going to vary by use case. Do you have any specific opinions on that one?
Actually, I've not really run into this too much
Me
at
neither.
my day jobs, but yeah, I understand for some things you definitely have to do that. So it was just interesting to lurk and see people's opinions on this one for me.
Yeah, because the one other one that was mentioned in the thread several times is the header, returning the version number in the header, but then you're tying the version number of the UI with the backend. I'm not exactly in love with that option, but again, if you release a version, your backend and your UI, that might be a good option as well, right? Because you can
Mhm.
just check, hey, if it's greater, go and refresh and make sure they have the latest fields and anything. Because if it's causing you, again, I'm on your side here that I haven't had issues with this. I'm an F5 person, right? Just keep blasting. If something doesn't work, I just refresh.
Yeah,
But if most of your issues are this, then you have to get pretty intentional about how you refresh.
yeah, totally. And then we had another conversation about how to handle large events that exceed the limits. So we're thinking like things like SQS, SNS. I think someone might have even mentioned event bridge events exceeding the payload limit size and just how to handle it. And a lot of folks were mentioning S3, which honestly to me is not surprising. Actually, at my day job, we run into this quite a bit where payloads are huge. So we actually just put stuff straight into S3. But it was brought up that there might be some performance implications and things like that. So it's definitely a trade off. And also just knowing what kind of events you're going to be getting. If it's every now and then, I think someone mentioned something about adding in logic for if it's over a certain size to like conditionally put it into S3. That also seemed like a decent idea. But yeah, what were your thoughts on that one, Andres?
It's yeah, S3 is my first option as well, and I see it a lot with like step functions as well. If we're usually, yes, we can scale infinitely, but no, data limits are usually the next issue you step into. S3 is the option. Again, if the payload sizes are big only for a fraction of the time, then that toggle, send the message. If not, send an S3 URL. How complex that could become for you depends on how you're using it. Like you said, you've used it where it's just always S3 and you have no issues with the
Mhm.
latency. So I think it's the best option. Like your next step, if you're doing like SQS that has a 256 kilobyte limit, your next step is okay, let's do DynamoDB, but that's 400 kilobytes. Then okay, so you're just pushing it a little bit forward. With S3, you can go all the way up to 5 terabytes if you want, but hopefully you're not sending messages that size.
That would be wild to read, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Yeah, with great power comes some limitations here. So
Yeah.
always important to just monitor and yeah, if it's a common thing, definitely adjust for it, but otherwise handle it on a case by case basis.
Yep. Agreed. Another good one, right? So when was registration for reInvent? I guess last week, but conversations about the session registration opening and what strategies to use for reserving spots. I didn't have a great strategy this year. Fortunately, I was flying cross country while that was going on, so I couldn't exactly register. But a lot of the things to consider that I've done in previous years is register for things that are not recorded. Game days, but we were talking earlier, and I don't think game days are registrable anymore. But you have,
Yeah, it looks like walk up, but
okay,
I just glanced at it, so correct me if I'm
interesting.
wrong, listeners.
Yeah. Chalk talks are not recorded. What else is there?
Mm, I think those
You
are
know,
the big ones. Yeah.
jam sessions are super fun. Obviously, we're talking after registrations. The strategy we say right now is going to help you for next year, but not for this registration because seats are probably gone by now. Yeah, I tried to attend things that are not recorded. Breakout sessions are all on YouTube a week or two after reInvent, so you can watch those. Take note of the ones you want to watch so you can come back for those. If you can't make a talk, again, put it on your list. You can go back and watch it. And I don't know if you've used Raphael scheduling tool,
Yeah,
but
it's fantastic.
this last year he added a link to the YouTube talks from the session planner. So again, if you have it starred and all that, you can have all these cross links so you can actually watch the things you couldn't watch while you were in Vegas.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a big upgrade. And yeah, but personally, many thanks to Raphael for using his own time for
Yeah,
just helping out the community. I always really respect a lot of folks that do things
yeah.
like that. So thank you, Raphael.
We appreciate what you've done to help us and make our reInvent experience easier.
Yeah, I feel like usually for me, the sessions that seem the most interesting are like they'll announce something new at a keynote, and
Yeah,
then immediately after the keynote, they have the sessions put in the catalog. Those are usually the ones that are interesting to me to attend. Um,
yeah.
so,
And for people going to reInvent, you can set notifications on the AWS event app for when new sessions appear. So make sure to have that so you're not in a F5, F5, F5 kind of thing looking for the new sessions. And another thing is there's a lot of talks that happen within the expo, right? I don't know what the layout's going to be this year, so maybe it's outside the expo or somewhere else, but there's these stages where there's shorter talks, usually open seating, very good talks. Usually the best ones I attend are there. And it's just like I've had the talk around the IoT barbecue by Jimmy Dalfus, right?
oh
That's
yeah,
the first time I heard it. Then they're like the doorbell camera by Padubu. So a lot of these talks that we see throughout the year, but they're live there and like their first version, their first presentation there. Those are pretty cool to see too.
yeah, I totally agree. I love those ones. Just hearing what other people are working on, and number one, being super impressed, but also just selfishly getting ideas for my own projects. All right. See what we have next here. ElastiCache serverless. They just announced Valkey support. And this was also discussed. Usually, anytime we bring up ElastiCache serverless, there's a little bit of what isn't serverless, because this is one of those services where it has a monthly minimum charge. And depending on who you talk to, they'll say that is or isn't serverless. Personally, I would say no, but I do think
It's
it's an upgrade because you are
yeah,
managing less.
it's more managed, right? Again, if you're a purist, it's not purely serverless, but if you're using ElastiCache and you're managing your own instances and all that, this is a step up for you to have to manage less. The same situation I had with OpenSearch. It's like I have to manage less. So I'll
Yeah.
still take it. Will I claim? Will I use it in my personal projects? Probably not because I don't want that price tag. But for large enterprises or where a lot of your pieces actually you need this, Elasticsearch Serverless just got again an upgrade and now supports Valkey, and a lot of the conversation went to seeing lower costs with this as far as the ElastiCache serverless offering goes. I haven't tried it, so I haven't proved it. This is just based on what we talked about within the Discord.
Yeah, and like I read somewhere that like monthly minimum was used to be $90, and now with Valkey, I believe it's $6 is what I read. That's a big difference. So that might get me to try to at least experiment with it in a personal
Yeah,
manner.
I can take on a $6 charge in a month to try it out. 90, a little bit. Yeah,
It's a
I'll
bit
think
much.
about it.
Yeah.
So it's cool to see Valkey got announced what 6, 8 months ago.
I think so.
Maybe less,
Yeah,
maybe less. So for it to get
yeah.
so for it to get introduced into the ElastiCache offering, that's pretty cool for the maintainer. So congratulations to everybody maintaining Valkey, and thank you for bringing prices down for us.
Yeah, and really excited to see like the performance improvements and things like that as time passes. It seems like it's got some pretty good potential. So congrats to the maintainers. All
Cool.
right.
So we next want to talk about unanswered questions, which we only seem to have one. Will I have the answer? Probably not, but we'll open it up for someone to come back and answer. Maybe you have the answers. You have the answers to everything, right, Danielle?
Yeah, sometimes that answer is I don't know, but it's an answer.
Yeah. Yeah. The question was asked by Omid, who I got to meet in person last week. So that was awesome. Hi, Omid. He's as energetic in person as he is in the chat. Lovely. But to the question, anyone has a guideline or best practices to test machine learning models and validate prediction before going to production? We train mostly data-driven models using production data, but I wonder how I can validate them in dev and stage them before going into prod under A/B testing to evaluate the results. Again, I don't have the answer. I don't have a best practice for this because I haven't done it. So I wouldn't
Yeah.
provide any guidance.
Yeah, I think this is a hard one. I almost wonder if we're all asking this question because we want to see what the LLMs will spit out as an answer, especially if using it in a professional app like that. I think it was like some Canadian airline. They had a chat bot, and the chat bot like gave a discount to people. This is, you probably would want to validate that, but
Yeah.
it's so unpredictable. So yeah, we're just bringing it up here in case any of our listeners might know and be able to give them some tips.
Yeah. So if you're listening and you have applied something in your daily job or in your projects, jump in the Discord and continue this conversation with Omid. I am definitely interested in what people have to say about this.
All right, let's get to our live streams. This was like maybe a moderate / busy week. We had 3 different live streams. I watched 2 out of the 3 live, so that was really cool. Let's start with the first one. This one was from Pete Naylor. He used to work for the DynamoDB team at AWS. And I believe the title was something like DynamoDB to Postgres. So that was really, I watched it after and it was cool. But let's check out a clip of it and then we can chat about it.
How many different databases do you want to learn to build on? How many different interfaces and query languages do you want to teach new devs who are joining your team? How much of the data propagation complexity do you want to own? I appreciate all of the work that's been done with DMS and data pipelines and Glue and Zero ETL, etc. But in my opinion, as a consumer, we should really demand more.
Yeah, thought-provoking as always. The clip that we pulled out was more surrounding talking about more like proprietary databases such as DynamoDB and like how that requires like a very specialized way that you query it versus maybe something a little more generic that's SQL based.
Yep.
So I thought that was a super good point, especially when working on a team, is how much do you need something super specialized versus maybe something that your team mostly or all already knows, such as Postgres. So, well, SQL.
It's SQL, right? At the end of the day, most people, big enterprises, they're just trying to move away from their SQL Server management license, right? Because that's a hefty. And you see all these options, right? And the option of NoSQL always comes along. It's this is cheaper and all that. I've gone through this with my previous job, which is like, hey, we're trying DynamoDB. You get a lot of pushback first. Hey, we don't know this. We have all these DBAs. We have all these conversion engineers that all they know is SQL. So you start getting into this trying to swim against the current with these different offerings. And again, it's a different set of things you have to learn. And kind of when you start learning NoSQL, it's the first thing you need to do is forget about SQL, right? It's because it's completely different. And what applies here doesn't apply over here. what I do think now is the things like Postgres and all the offerings on top of Postgres have gotten a lot better. So we've seen Neon several times in the Believe in Serverless community, and they provide serverless Postgres with all the automatic scaling and all these features on top of it that are not just your normal, hey, I get joins and it's what you lose when you go NoSQL, but now you can provide the scale, right? And Aurora Serverless is something that separates the compute from the data and all those things that's gotten better throughout the past 5 years. I think people are shifting back to relational in a sense, because there's things you lose and there's trade-offs with each of them. Seeing the operational aspect in your organization is something that often gets overlooked or gets a ton of pushback, and it's just super complex.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed how he was straight up about, hey, there's trade-offs. Like in some cases, DynamoDB is great, but in other cases, Postgres is great too. And one thing to consider is the knowledge of your existing team and how that might align. Because then if it's something that people already know, you can just move faster starting out. And he was just, with Postgres in particular, he was focusing on the community and just how active it is. And there's so many new things like different extensions on top of Postgres that you can use, and how he sees that as the future. So it was really cool talk. Definitely check it out if you missed it. Let's get to our second talk of the week. This is from DevTools here, AWS DevTools hero Brian Hogg. He was talking about using AI with the AWS serverless. So let's check out a clip of that.
So what's cool is that you could just start using all these AI models just like right off the bat. And you don't need to work at a specific company to get access to this stuff. Like it's all like very accessible. And we're going to talk about why you might want to go this approach in a little bit.
He showed Bedrock and demoed how to enable a model, how to test it in the console, but then he also gave a very high-level view of what a full-stack app might look like with Bedrock in it. So that was cool. And then he also mentioned he is interested in coming back and maybe doing some live coding with us. So that'll be fun as well.
Yeah, so I've used Bedrock a few times with Alan and in our live stream. So it's pretty cool, pretty simple to use. And again, you get a single interface to all these models just by providing the model ID. You still had the difference in inputs and all that, but they now have I can't remember what that package is called, which creates a single interface, and you just tell it the model ID and everything else is exactly
API.
the Converse API, which makes it a lot simpler to use whichever model you need that provides the better results for you. So I do like what they're doing as far as cost management and turning it on. Obviously, there's a little bit extra steps to enable the model, get it approved and all that. But as far as the cost, again, it comes in separately. Unfortunately, you can't use your builder credits or hero credits for those. Maybe heroes, I don't know. But the builder credits definitely not to pay for the model usage, right? The Bedrock usage, yes, but the model usage itself, no. It might be easier if you're in a big company to get that approved via the cost coming from AWS rather than a separate company. That's usually a problem with big enterprises, which is why the AWS marketplace is huge, because hey, you can just provision it via AWS and it comes as part of your cost. I do the exposure of the different models in such an easy manner using Bedrock, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's still hard for me to not unhear the Flintstones, the TV show, when I hear people say Bedrock. But yeah, that was an awesome talk. I always really like the energy and the positivity that Brian brings to everything he does. So definitely check that out if you haven't.
Yeah, I met him in person last year at reInvent, and he's so energetic, so happy, big smile all the time.
Definitely. All right, so we had our last talk. He's an AWS community builder as well. Mohammed Izzy gave a talk about Apache Flink in AWS. So let's watch a clip of that.
So when you check that box of auto scaling, if Flink detects that, okay, so as per the documentation from what I've seen, is whenever the CPU utilization is above 75% consistently for 15 minutes, it's going to automatically scale the parallelism value. So it does that for you. And it's during that auto scaling phase where your application might be, I think it does continue to operate, but not at full capacity because it's doing something in the background, right? But yes, it does that.
Yeah, honestly, I have a little bit of a confession. Before I hosted this, I might have looked up what Apache Flink was.
You should see my browser right now. It's the first thing I was going to say is I'm always impressed at how many things AWS manages and has. It's like Apache Flink. It's just not something that's come in my plate for something. Hey, I need to use something that this solves.
Yeah, super interesting though. And if you need some more info on Flink, Mohammed's definitely the person to reach out to. I could very tell that there was a deep level of expertise in the way that he was just able to break down what Apache Flink does, when you would use it versus like when you might use something like Kafka or Kinesis instead. And then he even just did a quick ClickOps demo of getting a cluster set up. And then afterwards, he emphasized, this is just for demo. You should use infrastructure as code. But yeah, great Q&A at the end as well. So I would highly recommend watching all of it just to learn about Apache Flink. And it seems like a nice, great for data streaming if you need that. And because it's by Apache, you could probably use the same or similar API outside of AWS if you ever need to self-host or anything like that. So,
yeah, the good thing of understanding your options, which one provides the better benefits for you. So Flink could provide that over Kinesis, Kafka, and all the other options that are available. Yeah, I'll have to take that for a spin. And again, heavy emphasis on infrastructure as code. And they just released the latest version or an official version of kind of the ClickOps generate your infrastructure as code from ClickOps. So make sure to take a look at that because ClickOps appears in our day-to-day. Sometimes you're trying to get something quick. You don't have a template for it. You'll go in there and check your options. But if you have that generator, it can dump out your IAC.
Yeah, historically, that's been a great use for Terraform because you can just import existing resources that may or may not have been ClickOps by current or former coworkers.
Yeah, it's like the biggest drift is the resources you don't have.
That too. Yeah, we should make that a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely check that out. That was our third and final talk for the week. So thanks to everyone that presented. Honestly, you all are what makes this community special and great. And I love all the different voices and hearing what people are passionate about and the questions that people ask. So keep showing up, keep asking questions, and keep learning. Along the lines of that, next week, we have an event on, this week on October 17th. If you are listening before, we've got an introduction to Amazon Q for the discerning developer with Cyril Bandelou. He's an AWS hero. So that should be cool. Looking forward to that one.
And then we've also, I don't know if you're on X, Twitter, the Believe in Serverless party has been officially announced at reInvent. Yay! This was one of my greater highlights for last year. So if you're attending reInvent, I highly recommend that you register. It's going to be on Tuesday, December 3rd at the Heart of Omnia at the Caesars Palace. So highly recommend this event. So please register so you can get in. There's limited seats. I didn't sit at all, but a lot of dancing.
For the fire marshal, you can only fit so many people in a room.
So we'll make sure to add a link on the notes for registration.
Yeah, I usually really don't like parties like that, but I went last year, and honestly, that was the first for me enjoying a party like that. So even if you're like pretty introverty and don't like loud music and stuff, I'd recommend you show up and check it out because yeah, it honestly was the highlight of reInvent for me last year. So
That's where we met in person for the first time.
yeah. It's like you turn around and you just see people that like you've talked to before, and you're like, is this who I think it is, or do they
Yeah.
just look like them?
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's fun. All right. So, with that, I think that's all we had to cover this week for the podcast. Thank you for listening. If you're not already in our Discord, you should definitely join us. That's a great spot to be a part of these conversations, also to see what's going on in terms of events that you may or may not want to join. And yeah, just continue to hear what people are working on. There should be a Discord invite. If you're going to believe in serverless.com/community.
Yeah, if not, reach out. We'll make sure you get in. But happy to get new people, start new conversations, or just have people read the conversations and learn. Some of the time, a lot of the time, that's what I do. I highly encourage people to join and let your friend know, your coworkers know, and help us get to that 1,000 number. That's truly our goal. We're trying to get that before reInvent. So we'll see how we get there. We're at 923, so 77 more. I know we can do it.
Yeah, and then don't be shy. Feel free to definitely ask questions in there. And if you don't get an answer, who knows? Your question may be featured in a future episode. Awesome. I hope you all have a great week, and we will see you next week. And if not, we'll see you in the Discord.
See you. Thanks, Danielle.